that 45-minute time in mind, would it make sense for us? Like we've used this for prep. I don't know how much time we use, maybe like 15 or so minutes. Should we just start a new call now preemptively?
Um, no, I think we get into it just a little bit. That way we
Okay,
just have, because we still have like in this call, I don't know. I think we have in this call enough to build with that other call to make that happen if
cool. All right.
if we need, if that's okay with you.
That's totally fine. Whatever works for you.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Let me make sure that it is up and running. Okay, cool. Little intro and then our questions and then we're in it.
Cool.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pure Joy podcast, a bi weekly exploration of what brings people joy. Today, with me, I have guest Susie Alvarez. Today, with me, I have guest Susie Alvarez with us to talk to us about her joy. Susie, why don't you introduce yourself to us a little bit first? Tell us who we're talking to today.
Hi. Yes, as you said, my name is Susie Alvarez. I am from Chicago, born and raised. I got the introduction to M actually just having a really great meal and some drinks with a good friend and, learned about this podcast. And I love that you do this, by the way. This is amazing. And
Yeah.
basically just asked you if I could do it. And you were gracious enough to say yes. So thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. I mean I love that about it. I think, I started and I only had like friends and family in mind because that's really all you can do when you I guess want to do something like this. And over the course of it, there's been like strangers here and there. A guest introduces me to someone new, or like someone listening to the podcast is like, "I want to talk about joy." I'm like, "I love this." Like, as long as it's inspiring people to want to continue to share their joy with other people, then that is all I can really ask for. So
Yeah.
yes, it's
No,
I
you got
love
it.
that she wanted to come on, and I love that we could actually like set it up, and we did it pretty quick, and we did it, and that's just exciting. It's exciting to have you on. So we like to start each of these episodes off with a little question that is just something you found joy in today.
Yeah. So today, this Sunday morning is a little bit different from other Sunday mornings because it is a long weekend. So this is a little bit of a ramble, but usually on Sundays, I go see my family. Like I said, Chicago native. So my mom and my sister are here. We're very close. So I'll like get up and go to the suburbs to see them. But since it was a longer weekend, we kind of had more time to play with. I saw them yesterday, and I live with my boyfriend. We have a bulldog. They're also in the suburbs. So this was one of the Sunday mornings that I just was able to like get up kind of when I wanted to get up, have like absolute silence, make my coffee, sit with my coffee, just kind of be. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
theme that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So that I think brought me joy was just kind of like the peace and serenity of the morning, the rain made it all very almost kind of like personally romantic, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I much experienced the same thing this morning. And yeah. Just got up. I had we hmm, losing my train of thought. Yes, I had much the same thing this morning. When I got up, got out of the shower, got to go upstairs. I One of my favorite parts about every morning is making coffee, because we do French press. I grind it every morning and measure it out, make sure it's all right, and then I just enjoy my French press of coffee. It is how I've hold myself back from drinking so much excess coffee is making like my
Right.
2 or 3 cups matter, and then it keeps me going and keeps me like happy for the day because I like did this thing for myself. um
Yes. Yes.
yeah, so much the same thing. Like once the coffee was made, I like, I enjoy all the steps of morning coffee. Is like one of my favorite parts of the day. It feels like a centering moment in my morning. And I definitely felt that
Absolutely.
this morning. Some mornings, it's less so because it's just part of the routine, but other mornings, like when it's
Right.
less speedy, less a necessity, it brings so much more joy. Yeah.
Used to. So I like my whole career has been corporate. And I think like when I realized how nice it was to have the morning to myself, I started waking up very early just so that I could like make my coffee, sit on the couch and just have like some like silence to myself. Nothing to do. I'm not checking email. I'm not doing anything, but just like sitting down and having a cup of coffee. And it was wonderful. And then of course I was like, I'm gonna maximize sleep and I'll just do my coffee times at, like on the weekends. So,
Yeah.
but yes, I agree
Yeah,
with
this is
everything
the
you said.
first time in my life where I have taken to staring listlessly out the window, in my apartment,
Isn't
you know
it
what I mean?
nice?
It's incredible.
Yeah,
The, like, view is just right, it's, like, not so drawing and not so boring, it's, like, there's some trees and some buildings, and every now and then a person passes by, and it's perfect, you could just, like, stare and drink coffee and, like, look somewhere else and stare and drink coffee, and then an hour later, it's like, I'm ready to crush this day.
yeah,
Or less
yeah,
time
yeah.
usually, but yeah. Um, awesome, awesome. Well, it sounds like we had some nice relaxing mornings. So on to our topic of the episode. What in life brings you pure joy?
So I did some homework for this and I looked up the definition of joy. I'm sure you've had other listeners or guests do this before,
Only
but
one.
oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's make it two. So, the definitions I found were great pleasure or delight, a source or cause of delight. And I think thinking back on these moments that have made me feel this way, the theme that I found is being able to be fully present in something for the sake of just being able to be present and exist. And I think that fits well with the coffee experience. But what I realized in my life that made me feel that way, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, was so a little bit of context here. I used to be a consultant. So I would travel Monday through Thursday out to a client site. And
Gotcha.
I was doing this every week. One of my first projects was in California. And it was dreadful, like waking up for those flights and then coming back and like you wouldn't sleep. So I was like,
Oh,
I'm just
wait,
gonna ask
like
my
every
client.
day?
Oh, no. Just waking up early Monday morning,
Oh, I
3
totally
a.m.
understand that. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for a flight out to California, and then you would
Work,
like the
work, work,
time
work,
adjustment
work.
kind of worked in my favor. Yeah, but you would work the whole time, like the whole, it's like 12-hour days. And Thursday you'd fly back, or I'd fly back to Chicago, and I'd get back to Chicago at like 6 a.m. So it's just dreadful.
Mhm.
So I asked my client if like, can I just get an apartment in California for the remainder of this project and I'll be more fresh and whatever. They agreed. It made sense financially for them. So once I was there, I knew nobody.
Mhm.
And I had this one day where I just got in my rental car and I was like, I'm just gonna go explore, just gonna go drive around the hills. And it hit
Mhm.
me like a ton of bricks how much joy I had doing that. Like I had nowhere to be, I had nothing to do. There were no expectations that I had of myself or that anybody had of me.
Mhm.
I could just explore and live and take everything in. And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, like just like a really it's such a beautiful thing when you allow yourself to remember. I mean, it's so much deeper than kind of what I'm saying because I think oftentimes, and I won't project this on other people, though I know other people have felt this way because I've had conversations about it. Like you kind of question your worthiness and you think that like the value that I have is equally tied to what I produce and what I do for others, right? Like,
Mhm.
and when you can just kind of let all that slip away and there's no expectations of yourself, you realize like how worthy you are. You can actually just exist and you can just enjoy a moment and just enjoy like this beautiful world that we live in. And since that moment, I've had other opportunities to do this. I spent 2 months in Colombia, um, and I would make it a point every morning or especially on the weekends to just get out and explore, just walk.
Mhm.
But of course, you don't need to go to California or Colombia to do these things, right? Like I've started just trying to like make this part of my life
Yeah.
of just getting on my bike and going down the lake. Yesterday my boyfriend and I took a long walk on the 606 and we just got to be. I think other moments where I felt the same level of joy has been, sitting around with my family or my friends and just having a good meandering conversation, right?
Mhm.
And just being. And there's certainly like, I think in this, it is a little bit maybe because of um like my life and my career. Like I said, I used to be consultant. Now I'm uh an executive and I run a department. And I think that, in this structure, and this is not just like for corporate life, like this is for anybody,
Yeah.
right? Like your time is meant to be spent in certain ways. And when you have free time, it's like, well, be on your phone, watch a TV show, or go run an errand. So you're either wasting or spending your time. And maybe
True.
that's a little bit of strong, but I think like where I find joy is when I'm doing none of those things. I'm not being productive, and that's fine. Like being productive gives me a lot of meaning, but not necessarily joy. I'm not spending it, I'm not wasting it. I'm just letting it slip away. And that makes me feel, I think, very connected in a way that's hard to at other times. So
I think
that's a
that
very long
no,
explanation.
I love it. I love it. I it's interesting. I was like I went on like a journey with you as you were like going through this.
Yeah.
When you started, I was like, man, I'm never present. I struggle with this intently. And then you kept going on. I was like, no, wait a second. Sometimes I'm present in the coffee example. Like often in the mornings, I'm very like that is my present time. And then recently, I picked up from an episode, someone inspired me to start riding a bike again. And so I do that at night when I'm coming home from work, very present in that moment. Um, and I think that I enjoy those moments so deeply because I know that in between them, I have all of the spider web going, you know what I mean? I have like this stressor, and this to-do list, and then this job, and this job, and like how to balance and weigh them. And when I get one moment of free time, which one will I tackle and how will I tackle it? And so I know that like that is gonna be most of my day. It's just the spider web firing off, trying to do all these things and make all these connections. And um I think that I could describe that same concept in several ways. I am pleased with the way that it sits. I think that this is me wielding my ADHD. I know I have all of these things, and if I lose focus on this thing, I have 10 other things to grab my attention so that I can keep this
Right.
going, right? And not just like let all this fly away. But
Right.
it, on like as for the topic at hand goes, it does prevent me from being like enjoying just my personal bubble of space, my
Right.
personal existence in this moment. It's just about what I need to get done or the to-do lists. And I really like how you put that it's like achieving your to-do list and like getting these things done gives you meaning, but it doesn't necessarily bring you joy all of the time. And I think that that is like that's very apt for a lot of the things that we discuss here on the podcast, is that just because you succeed at something, just because you do something regularly or all the time, doesn't mean that you find any joy in it. And I think that people do often get distracted by the processes of things. Like
Right.
I do this. I as an example, I edit the podcast. So sometimes I could get lost in finding the joy of the podcast. Um
Hmm.
and yeah, I think that that's just really a really good point, taking those moments to step back and find what does bring you joy about whatever it is you're doing. Um
Absolutely.
yeah.
And you can't have one without the other. I think like if I didn't have like the meaning that I get from work, and like, if you didn't have the meaning that you get from what you do, and you didn't have all of these things that need to get done and like the things that like give you purpose and that drive you, there would be no reason for you to stop and take a moment and like just feel that gratitude and just be present. Like I think that those both really help each other out very much. And also there's some utility in it. I read this book, The Organized Mind. I can't remember the author, and if I try, I'm going to say the wrong one. But one of the points that he made is that when your mind is at rest, consciously at least, you think that you are not working out all of your things. You think you're not working out the spider web, but actually your brain is doing a lot of work. And it does this when you're sleeping as well, right? You might go to bed with a problem, you'll wake up, you'll know the solution. You might be trying to solve, let's say, an equation. You step away from it. All right, let me take a break. You come back to it later. You have
Mhm.
the answer. So when our minds are at rest, when our minds are not focusing on the things or thinking, actively thinking about the thing within our control, and when I say within our control, I mean like we are controlling the thoughts that we have in that moment to try to solve the thing, we're still making a lot of progress. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Like this is a healthy thing, and I'm meandering a little bit here, but one quote that comes into my mind a lot, and we're not talking about meditation, but we are talking about just being present and just existing, which I think kind of serves a similar purpose. Now,
Yeah.
an expert in this area can come and correct me, but think of this quote that was, "You should meditate for at least 5 minutes a day, unless you're really, really busy and stressed. Then you should meditate for 10." Right? So it's these things give each other a lot of value, right? The work that we do, the things that we have to do, and the time that we spend just with ourselves and just looking out the window,
Right.
doing nothing. They actually help each other a lot.
Yeah, I
But that's not why it gives me joy, right? It just gives me joy because it's just nice to remind yourself, like, I'm a human and I could just be.
yeah, yeah, I don't need to be doing all of these things. I just
Yes.
push myself to do all of these things. Um,
Yeah.
yes, 100%. That is something that I have come into terms with of like as a, the older I get, I come to terms with that like I don't have to do everything on my plate. If a thing falls through the cracks, it is okay and it's not the end of the world. And either I'll pick it up or I'll leave it there. And who cares? Like it is okay.
Yeah.
No one truly will care about whatever the thing is that fell through my cracks of my spider web.
Right.
Like, and that's
Right. It
great.
isn't life or death. Yes,
Yes, and the
yes, it is
things
a
that
great
are,
reminder.
like, obviously will have more weight and, will get the things done, but, like, the things that do fall through the cracks usually are the things that can lay there, and becoming okay with that concept, was definitely a journey in its own right and led to a lot of, like, more relaxation in getting these things done, right? I
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I look forward to the sleep reset of my brain for the day when I know that I'm like, "Good, now you can do your work and I'll go to bed." Uh, and the brain just does everything that it needs to do. And I feel like that's another good thing about that morning coffee for me in my moments of present is that this like now the time to process like where I sit with all of these things that were probleming me the day before. Yeah.
yeah.
Do you so you said you said it seems, it's not exactly meditation, but I have been curious, like it does seem I mean, for meditation, it seems like you must be present, right? Like you have to be present for meditation. Um, do you think that this is sort of like a meditative practice for you? Not necessarily,
I think I believe that it's beneficial in similar ways, right? Like I have meditated before of like the, focus on your breathing, what do your feet feel like? What do the tips of your fingers
Mm.
feel like? What are the sounds like? Just being incredibly present in that moment. And I think I got with similar things. There's obviously a lot more stimulus when I'm, taking a long walk than there is when I'm just focused on like my breathing and my body. But I think that the benefits are there. And I think that those practices kind of help each other because if I'm truly trying to be present on a walk through nature, let's say yesterday on the 606, yeah, like my boyfriend and I are having a little bit conversation, but mostly I wanted us to just like walk,
Hmm.
right? And just like look around. And I think that it does help, right? Like how am I feeling? How's my breathing? Taking in all the colors, like taking in all of these things. So yeah, I think the benefits are similar. And I think that they also pay dividends in other parts of my life, like in being actually like really present in a conversation, like listening to a tone of voice, reading body language, like understanding, the context around something, right? So
Yeah.
all of those things I think really end up helping in other areas. Um, but I so I meditation I think is a really great thing. I haven't quite cracked the nut on it, but I had a friend, I lived in Denver for a short period of time, and one of the friends that I made there was telling me about his meditation practice, and it was very different from the things that I had learned. And it
Hmm.
was actually about like thinking really hard about the people that you love and pushing out all of your love to them and then broadening it, like broadening that circle and broadening like the net of your love and being very like conscious until like all of your love is covering the globe. And I thought that was incredibly amazing. So I've started
Hmm.
making that my meditation practice at
Yeah.
night before I go to bed. I lay there and I think about like pushing out like all of this like positive energy, casting out like this wide net of love. And I think for me, what it makes me feel is like I have the power to show people that I care about them and have a positive impact on someone's life. Whether or not that is true, I think that might be a great thing to hold in your mind and your thoughts, and make you aware of the way that you're engaging with people and treating people. Like, am in this interaction, am I casting out my net or am I holding it back to myself? Um,
Yeah, no,
so,
absolutely. I have a very interesting, I think, connection on this thought, but I did get our message, so let's reset this thing
oh,
really
yeah,
quick,
yeah.
and then I will fire that off. So I'm gonna end this, and then I'm just gonna send you another invite to your email.
Cool. I'll be ready.
Perfect. We ended the meeting, y'all. Sorry, I don't have Zoom for everyone here hanging out. Um, so just so you know, we have to reset during the interview. But I appreciate you guys being here, hanging out, enjoying Susie's take on joy, what brings her joy, and why. Join with computer audio. Hello, 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 hello. You can hear me. Participants, invite, email. I'm going to turn these off while I do this real quick because I don't want anyone to see an email, right? All right, cool. That's done. Now we want to turn them back on. Close this. Hello. All right. And we still should be good to go once Susie joins us. Hiplup, thank you for joining us today. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you
Okay,
now.
perfect. And I can hear you. Great. Um so in talking about being present, I feel like a lot of the things that we've had on here are involved with being present, and it feels like it's just like a good through line for so many topics. I've had like parents on who they're here to talk about parenting, but it's not just being a parent, it's the times in which they can feel the joy of like the rest in this new crazy life with children. Or I had someone come on that talked about chaos magic and the ways that there's like symbology and things that he looks out for to tell him if he's like on the right path. But it required a great training for him to be like hyper present in every moment to find these symbols as he's moving about so that he can like capture them and continue to like work with them. And then even my last episode, I think it actually came out maybe this morning, maybe an hour ago. I'm not even sure anymore. Sometimes I just lose track of time. But he's talking about the concept of like synchronicities, and so you're out and about and you see like the date of your grandmother's birth, and then you see another number with the same thing, and it like is showing you that like all these signs are kind of pointing you in the right direction. And that requires being hyper present to see these things. And in each of these cases, I've been talking about how, I mean, as I'm moving from point A to point B is when my most spiderwebby things are happening, right? I am pretty absent, in fact, when I'm traveling, because I'm locked in my brain. So I've never been able to, I think, super relate to the being present in those moments. But the way that we've been talking about it, I like this like broader scope to it because I do feel like, yes, I am present, just it's more particular than the way I move about my whole life. It's a use to take that break, to take that relaxation and take that moment for myself. Um yeah, it's interesting. I think that it's a like meditation and being present are things that have been brought up as a sort of a bullet point to support a larger thing, and I'm very pleased
Mhm.
that we're breaking down now like less bullet point and more it is the larger thing, so we can like we're like diving into the what it really, means and feels like. Which,
Yeah.
on that moment, what does it feel like for you in the moment where you like do capture that you're alone this morning, for instance, or on the 606 when you get that moment of silence in the woods? What does that feel like for you?
I think for me, it feels like connection. And in the context of this conversation, I think presence and connection can almost be used synonymously because it feels like I'm truly connecting with myself
Hmm.
in terms of connecting with this bigger thing that I am part of, right? It's like a reminder that I am part of this world, of this universe, like of this current state. That's like my connection to Chicago, my connection to nature. But again, like it's in this context of it's like my connection to myself and with these things. That's really what it feels like. And I think that it also makes sense, right? Because one of the other things that we talked about was like, even just in a really great conversation,
Yeah.
you can feel that presence and you feel connected to those people that you're talking to, which is such a big thing, right? Because how many times have we just kind of had like these passing conversations or like, these really kind of soft conversations and it doesn't really feel super connected.
Hmm.
But when you're actually like vibing with someone and you're almost like finishing each other's sentences or you're getting the idea and you can like meander together. That feels so connected
Yeah.
to yourself and to that other person, right? And this like idea that you're sharing. And so I think that for me, that's oftentimes what that presence feels like, whether it's, taking a walk, talking to somebody, just having my morning coffee. It's like this time to like really connect to my own force
Hmm.
depending on the context of the situation or connecting my force to like this larger thing that we're all a part of or to someone else's mind. And that is very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it. It is. A lot of like I feel like our natural like energy around us or our flow through our lives comes from our like the connections we are able to make with other people and the energy that we're able to like feed off of one another.
Right.
The I mean, it's so easy to bounce off of like a negative energy for a day. You're moving out and about, someone bumps into you and they're like, "Hey, watch it. I'm on my way." Boom, they're done.
Yeah.
They are never going to think about you again, but you in this moment, it like for me at least in this moment it's so easy to like latch that energy onto me in that bump and now I'm like frustrated.
Yeah.
Now I'm in a hurry and like it's important to remember like to even if that little frustration doesn't happen to take that moment to take a breath and like do sort of like an intake of what's around you and where you're what you're doing at this moment and like how you're doing it at this moment. Are you projecting the right energy to allow for others to continue or to do the same thing that you're doing in being present? um
Yeah.
it's like a whole it like takes a community or as they say, um, to
Totally.
yeah, I think
Well,
to yeah.
it's I think it also lets you like the more connected you are with yourself, perhaps. I mean, this might be a stretch, but this is certainly what I think. So I'll throw it out there for you to react to. But let's say like in those situations where like somebody bumps into you or like you feel that they're being mean to you for no reason. This idea of like being like really connected with yourself and like connected with the world around you. I think at least for me, it helps me be like, who would I have to be to do what that person did? Maybe I would have to be in a really tough situation where I'm unaware of my surroundings. Like maybe I would have to be going through like a really hard time, or maybe I would feel bad for what I just did. Right. And it
Mhm.
kind of allows you to like let it fall away by bringing the situation some context. And then you can like also just say like, I don't feel good about just what just happened. Like, well, why don't I feel good? Oh, it made me feel like maybe that was personal.
Mhm.
All right, well, and then you go to like, well, who would I have to be to like do what that person just did? And then you can forgive, right?
Right, that is a it's hard to begin processing emotions in the moment and not just feeling them to their nth degree, but to say, like, what am I feeling? It's not just bad or mad, it's frustration. Because frustration is so different than anger and is different than
Yeah,
annoyance, which probably being bumped into is more of an annoyance than anything. Or a startle. Maybe I'm just startled and that's it. Like
yeah,
me, when I get surprised, my first reaction is like, "Hey, don't do that." Like a
yeah,
defensive yell at, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
like it always comes off like maybe angry, but it quickly is in fact just startled. Um,
Right.
breaking that down and like what that feels like for you. I may have talked about it before, but I think that there is this Buddhist thought process of I mean, one, all emotions are good in the end. And two, uh that there is nothing more important than feeling the emotion to its fullest. So as you feel anger, like that doesn't mean you need to project it or to act upon it or to berate someone with it, but you can feel this anger and like allow yourself to be angry, break down
Yes.
this anger and find the root of the anger. Is important. And that goes for everything: being frightened, being annoyed, being startled. Like, what in this moment did that and why?
Yeah.
And how did it make you feel and how is that important to you as a person? All that huge, and I think about that often as I like now begin to every now and then. I'm not an angry person at all. I think I maybe used to be, but I think since maybe beginning to break down my emotions, I'm not angry. I was rushed or hurried and it came off in this way. um I feel like it's it makes all of life easier. The other day, someone did something that it took me a good minute to come around to how I should approach this situation, but I gave myself like a good 30 minutes. I like kept it going. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna stick to myself for a second. And then I broke down like what I think would be the best. And then I like broke that down again. Like my first response might be a little harsh because I'm feeling lots of anger in this moment. Um, so let me go through what I would say. Like, okay, these are the things I would say. I'm like, okay, I could see how this would come off, how this would come off, blah, 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 blah. I'm not trying to get off the emotion of anger. I'm trying to get off the emotion of like how this hurt me, right? Because that's in the end the bottom of the anger. Like what I was truly feeling was hurt in this moment, not anger.
Yeah.
And that is that like greatly actually I don't even know that I came to that conclusion until I said that out loud just now.
Wow.
But like I when I talked to them, it definitely came from the position of hurt and not anger. Like I was angry, and so there was a little bit of anger in my voice, maybe on my brow, but it hit as hurt. And so when I was able to, we got to the bottom of it and they responded positively, right? Of course, they got defensive because now they're, like, I don't like having hurt someone. If I hurt someone, I feel hurt and then I feel mad at myself. And so, like, I get this in, response. And so then they break it down. They come back and they're like, okay, true apology. Here we go. There was some hurt and I apologize. And here's where I came from. And I said, I appreciate that. And we got to the bottom of it. And it was great. But only because I was able to take that moment, not just be angry, but break down why I was being angry, allow myself to feel it for a little bit, and then
Yeah.
move on. A
A-
great moment of being present, I think.
Absolutely. Like you connected with yourself in that moment to say, like, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Like, and you could only do that by actually like allowing yourself to feel.
Yeah.
And then communicating that, right? Connecting with that other person, like allowing them into your mind. And then you reached a resolution. And I mean, obviously, I think we all know that's not always the way that
No.
that conflicts go, right? Like sometimes people are not as open to connecting with how you feel and how you think in that moment. And I mean, like that's fine,
Hmm.
but you did right by yourself, right? Like
Yes.
you validated your feelings by just feeling them and asking yourself, like, what is this and why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Interesting.
think like all of these things that we're talking about, at least like, this theme here of like being present as I, we kind of talked about before, it pays dividends in so many other ways. It really is a practice. And these like practices that you do, like also like that, the love meditation, or I do this other one every night where I just like focus on, it's a two-parter. It's like the love feeling. And then it's also like just this gratitude feeling. I truly believe that these things help you just live your life and work through and move through the human experience, which is incredibly complex because of all the different emotions that we have, like which you named, like annoyance, frustration, anger, hurt. All of those things are a lot, right?
Hmm.
And the more tools that we can have to work through them and experience them, because really like they're beautiful things and they tell us a lot about ourselves, right? Like we give ourselves the meaning that we look for. Like your friend or your other guest who talked about like, looking for signs and symbols. Those signs and symbols only mean anything because he knows what they are. He knows what he wants to feel. So he
Yes.
can be able to like find them and see them. And all of these things do that for us, right? Like the more we think
Yes.
about presence, the more we can use presence. The more that we think about gratitude, the more we can use gratitude. Um, then it works in the opposite way as well, right? Like the more that we, focus on the things that make us angry, the more we can use anger.
Hmm.
So it's really about like asking yourself, well, what do I want to be? Who do I want to be? How often do I want to experience these things? And do I want to share them with other people or not? With being careful not to project. But um,
It's tough.
yeah, I think that it's all very connected.
It's really tough to not project your emotions. That's the I
Yeah.
think so in all of that, right? In that 30 minutes I was definitely projecting anger. I kept to myself, but I it very clear that this is the emotion going through me at the moment. And
Yeah,
so, like, sure, it felt like a successful grasping of the thing, but there's still room to grow. There's still, room to, because that's not on anyone else around me. I'm not angry at them. I am just angry. And
right.
it is important to learn how to both, and I don't think it's like the negative side of like compartmentalization. I think that it is a developable skill to both feel a negative emotion or an emotion. It could be a positive one too, and not
Sure.
project that at all times, right? Like if the situation doesn't call for you being overjoyed and you are, like, you still need to be, go down when you need to, go up when you need to, but like, I think there's a happy balance. It's a thin line, right? Because you don't want to
Yeah.
fake it till you make it. You don't want to stuff up your feelings. You don't want to like build this compartmentalization block in your head. It's just there's this beautiful balance. And I think that with a lot of this, it comes down to like, just this trying to balance this disc just right. And letting it, stand on its own. But I think that,
Well, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, and
as
to your point, it's never going to be perfect. Like, I think it would be completely unreasonable and ungracious to ourselves and the people around us to expect that they're never going to project, right? Like,
Mhm,
you're going to feel anger and you're going to react angrily to somebody else. I did this weekend, right?
mhm.
And it was, my own stuff coming out on someone else. And I like, and it's not an excuse, but it's just like the reality of it, right? Like,
Sure.
we are not perfect, but to your point, the best we can do is like be aware and try our best to grow. But and you're so right. Like, it's like this balance of, holding yourself accountable, trying to learn, trying to grow, but also giving yourself grace, because you're not always going to get it right. And the situation is going to be different every time. And you're going to be showing up differently depending on like what you're showing up with.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, it's absolutely all of that. But I also think it's important, like, when you are in like a positive place, at least, but I'll speak for myself here. I have known people who exude this calm and like authenticity and like, like this Teflon skin type of thing. And they have to themselves like this great energy that I love to be around. And I think like, okay, that's me that loves to be around it, but that's also like, I would like to show up as that person for other people and just have that level. I mean, I don't know if this is like allowed to talk about on your podcast, so you can edit this out if you want to, but I was at dinner with some friends once and we took acid before dinner and we just kind of sat there having like a really cool conversation about all the weird things that were like coming up in our heads. And one of them was that like there's people with like different levels of like vibes. And it's not them projecting, but it's like how strongly do they like literally vibrate?
Yes.
And like yes, like there's some people who are just like they just take in, right? And they like mold to a situation. That's great. Like none of these things were good or bad. And then there's people, I think like that's like one end of the spectrum. And then there's people who bring the vibe of the room
Mhm.
where like you might have a negative vibe in the room, but once they come in, it changes and they bring that with them everywhere they go. And that's probably like incredibly rare, but you and I probably both know of some of those people. And I
Yeah.
would never say like that's like a bad thing. If you have like that positive energy, I think it's an incredibly good thing. But it might also be very exhausting for that person to like have that strong of an impact sometimes,
Definitely.
where like they might just want to turn it off and like just go home and like sit and like maybe they want to take a walk in the woods sometimes, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I think it's like all of the above, right? Because you don't want to project, but I think if you have worked on yourself enough to be like an incredibly like positive projection, maybe you want to share that. And like maybe those are the times where you're like, is this something that is worth sharing or is it not? And if it is, like it's kind of a great service to the people around you or the people that care about you to just come and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna like bring this calm right now."
Mhm. Mhm. It's probably my favorite thing about hallucinogens, just as the broad category and entirely, is the forced 6 to 8 hours of presence.
Oh
You
yeah.
are here for 6 hours and that's it. And you're not doing another thing. You can try, but you're gonna be present in that if that's what you want to do.
Yeah,
I love, like, I just, it breaks the need to do anything and shows you, I think, that, like, I don't actually need to do these things in this moment. I can do nothing, relax. I can go on an adventure, a journey, and like enjoy myself, enjoy my time here. Um, and that stuff will still be there when I'm done, and I'll do it
right.
in 6 hours or tomorrow or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I mean, it brings up so many things because it also I think one of the other things that I thought about was like it kind of changed my mindset from like I have to do these things to I get to do these things because so much of what we do is made up. Like it's made up.
Hmm.
My job is totally made up. Um and it's just like I think it brought to me like this sense of gratitude. Like I'm so grateful that we live in a world that made this thing up and I can make a living off of it and I'm like pretty good at it. And good enough that someone wants to pay me, right?
Right.
And I get to do that. Like it was just like such like a mindset shift because it then if it's something you like get to do, it's less like taking from me and it's more like giving to me,
Hmm.
right? Um, and that doesn't mean that like I don't like get like stressed at work sometimes and
Of
like it feels
course.
like the world's like falling on my shoulders, but I think it just kind of helps me like, reset a little bit and just kind of change the frame. Um and again, there's kind of a difference here, at least for me, right? And like a lot of these same themes give me meaning in the context of work, like being present, feeling connected, um, that gives me meaning. I wouldn't necessarily say all the time that it's the same thing or that same feeling of joy. Certainly, if there's like a big project and something was accomplished, and
Mhm.
I get to feel like, gosh, I was like so connected to that. I really felt for it. Like I really fought for it. Like that is such like a joyful thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like this amazing success. And you know that like you had such like a home in it and like made it happen.
Yeah.
Um, but it's certainly I feel like for me it like presents itself as a very different emotion from when it's just like I am just allowed to freaking exist
Hmm.
and that's it. Like I am enough to just exist and enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very it's so important to recognize the rarity of you existing as a human. My last guest said something along the lines of like a 1 in like 3 million chance that you as an individual are the individual that exists where you are now.
Oh, it's in the
Um,
trillions.
Trillions,
Yeah,
maybe.
I looked
Yeah,
this up
yeah,
before. Yeah, it's like significantly in the trillions. And that is so fantastic, right? Because it's like everyone you interact with is also
is
like
that
in that
lucky.
right, exactly. And then it's like you had to live in the same place. You had to like that chance meeting, right? So like everything truly is just like an incredible thing. Um, but I do really love thinking about that, right? And it's like that also goes back to like that thought of worthiness. It's like your chances of existing in this moment are so freaking slim that just for that, like you are worthy of something. Like you got this incredible opportunity to just be here at this time with this experience with these people. It's incredibly I'll go as far as to say like magic, right? Like
Yeah.
it's magical. And I also think it's one of those things that makes it so sad. Like when people pass away or like younger, right? Because it's like you think about all of those like chances that they would have gotten, like all the people they could have met, all the moments they would have gotten to just like be present and experience these things, right? Like I
Hmm.
hear about that a lot with loss of like, gosh, I wish that so and so could have been here to experience this, right? Like we know that those are the things that really give our life a lot of value and like just that feeling of joy. that makes it so magical. It's what makes it hard to kind of digest that someone lost that.
Mhm.
It's really like the experience. And all these other complicated things, right? But
Sure.
I think at some level we're all very much aware that however hard and complicated this existence is, it is also very beautiful. And we want the people that we love to be able to have it.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's tough. I did a my last job was IT setup for events or whatnot all over the country, and we would get hired out. We'd take a trailer of stuff. I'd set up the trailer of stuff, be it projectors, screens, microphones, all that good old junk. And they would usually, I only use junk in the terms of it would be like doctors and lawyers and conferences like that where people would be like talking about this one procedure for 8 hours and like how these 3 doctors do it differently, and like so we're in the back kind of bored because they're showing a lot of horrific pictures and chatting in technical jargon, but every one of them knows it, right? So they're not, I don't know. So we're just like, okay, we'll be on our phones. We did we did one that came out of nowhere. Thought I was doing something a normal event, and it was like the high school coming together to like eulogize a senior that had passed away. And so we get it all set up, and then we're doing, of course, we're like throwing in all this extra, like, how can we help? Can we, like, I would love to like help set up chairs. Can I, like, I don't know, do the flowers? Can I do all these things? I would like
Yeah.
anything that I can do to help this moment. And that is like one of the bigger things. I think I'm very gracious and lucky enough to not have experienced a whole lot of like loss since I've been of the age to comprehend what that is. Like 6th grade. Sure, I'm like I get it, but I think as an adult my understanding of like loss is hugely different than in 6th grade.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I think I've been super fortunate to not have experienced that, but it was interesting to be there and be actually present in that moment. Like it wasn't a moment in which I was distracting myself from these horrific body pictures at a doctor's conference, but I like turned things off and I like sat there and I like listened to the way that this community was showing their appreciation and love for this other person. And I didn't know them. I had never met them. I don't even think I actually saw the picture on the other side of the screen. I just got to hear about this person. And
Yeah.
um I can imagine that this is the kind of way to use a negative emotion like sadness to make a feeling better again at some point, right? Like saying these things out loud, it's not going to make you happy right away, but it is going to give you a sense of, understanding and peace in the moment. That
Yeah.
may immediately disappear when you get home and see a picture of the loved one or whatever, but like it will begin to build. It's just like I didn't have every conversation after 30 minutes of feeling the feeling and then do it well and then have that responded to well. Like it took conversations where people responded to it poorly and I was just like, well, I don't know if that went well. And then other times where I did bad and I came up and I was like, you can't do that. And they responded poorly because of course you can't yell at someone that you can't do that. Like it's a huge building process. And I think it goes,
Yeah.
the same way for that as like this one moment of feeling not okay is not the word, but relief or peace can begin to build the larger process.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things in that story that you just shared, right? Like there's just so many things. Like there's like the one like understanding like the vibe in the room, right? You didn't need to know this person. You knew it was a sad moment. Obviously, like we humans can contextualize, but also like the fact that like, you know, losing a life young is a sad thing. And we have to then go, why is it a sad thing? Right? It's because I think we all understand as a group that life is valuable, that we love each other, that there's people that loved this person and wanted to experience life with
Mhm.
that person present. So yeah, no, there's just so many things in there that you said about like connection and yeah, like the growth that comes with it, right? And I think
Mhm.
like, you know, as someone that's experienced loss, I think like it is one of those things that like it never goes away, but you start to build a different level of understanding. And it also makes like living so much more meaningful because you're like, "Oh, well, I am alive.
Mhm.
So how am I going to make this life valuable?" And again, it's like we give ourselves our own purpose. We give ourselves our own meaning. We decide what's going to be meaningful for us. But I think that was one of the ways that I was able to like reconcile still being here without, people in my family that have passed is like, well, I'm going to do my best because they're not here. And what would they have wanted to do? I must be grateful. I
Right.
must be present. I must be the best person that I can possibly be because I know this has meaning because of the loss that I've had.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see the meaning that I feel in this, and so I can apply that to my own life, right? Like
Yeah.
I can see the meaning in this loss means that for me in this moment, I should find, meaning in what I do have before it's
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
Um,
And it took a while to get there, but I think that like you said, like the processing happens, the processing starts, and then you end up there. But at first it's just like a pit of like, fuck. And then it evolves.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it looks like we are approaching a good time to begin wrapping things up. Would you like to summarize for us here I feel like we've talked about a couple different ways of being present or meanings of being present, but I don't know, like what does it mean to you to be present and yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think for me, what it means to be present is to allow myself to fully connect. And I think that when I'm able to fully connect in a way that makes time feel like it's completely fallen away, that's when I find joy. So it is that like true connection, be it with like a person, myself, nature, whatever the case, and certainly like the context of it matters. But I think that that is what it feels like for me to be present. Like I'm having like a similar experience as much as like, I possibly can.
Mhm.
Um, that's what it means for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that is aptly put. I think that along the way, we've done a very strong job of like wrapping each of the little topics and little segments off with its own little summary. So this is, I think, has been like really nicely um, put together on its own. Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate you making the time to come on out and join us, talking to me about your joy, and just being so open. I think it's tough. I mean, when I look forward to all types of interviews. Some people I know I've known forever, and I'm like, oh, this will be a bomb interview. We're best friends. And then they get on, and I'm like, what is happening? Why cannot anything be said between us right now? And others, like you, we've had a conversation, and you never really know where that's gonna go, and I'm very pleased that I actually, like, got to it, and this was a very, like, insightful and deep conversation into being present, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
No, and I want to thank you so much for what you do. I mean, the fact that you do this is awesome and I'm so grateful for it and I appreciate you so much for having me on and for the great conversation. This really brought me joy today.
yeah,
So thank you so much for that.
yeah, this is one thing that I think does time and time again bring me joy, and I'm very appreciative to continue to do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're gonna do some wrap up stuff here though. But I
Cool.
appreciate, yeah, you coming on out, and then yeah, I'll reach out to you soon and we'll just chat about how it went.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All
Yeah, we'll talk soon.
right.
As for you guys, Let's pop on over here. Oh, shoot. Ain't that always just the way? Beep bop boop. Beep bop. Where'd it go? Why is it all the way down here? Oh, we vibing. All right, everybody, welcome on back. Today, we talked with Susie Alvarez about her joy of being present. A little bit more of a maybe an ethereal topic, right? Like being present. We talked in a slew of ways that we feel this concept throughout our lives. Be that our morning coffee, a walk on a trail, just sitting and breathing and being present, a moment of loneliness. For me, a moment with my partner where we just sat on the couch and drank our coffee. Like it, finding these moments brings a very, uh, I feel like I'm losing the word, but an amount of peace that is difficult to find in other parts of your day. It's important for processing. It's important for understanding ourselves and our emotions and how we're feeling and why we're feeling what we're feeling. Giving yourself a moment of being present is oftentimes how you can get to the root of these feelings. Like I talked about, I felt angry in that moment. And even when I felt like I broke it down, I went and I talked with them. In that moment, when I was speaking, I felt anger. But while we were talking here, just breaking that down, uh, realizing that not anger but hurt was being felt is a huge step. Like that's huge. Adding that to my list of like, oh, it felt a little off. I didn't felt weird about feeling angry in this moment, but I was hurt. Like that is hard to sometimes split these two concepts apart, not just anger and hurt, but sadness. Like I said, frustration, annoyance, like all these things, they can kind of blend in sometimes as one another. And finding yourself a moment of being present in these heightened states of emotion can help you understand them a little better over time. That is not an every single time thing, right? That is not an every time you feel this emotion, it will work perfectly. You'll know what you're feeling. It's that you'll learn a little bit more each time. I Yeah, I really appreciate Susie for bringing this topic onto the podcast today. Like I said, being present feels like a bullet point on a lot of these other topics, parenting, gardening, music, like all of them, synchronicities, chaos magic, blah 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 blah, all of them. Like being present is huge. Finding these moments in which we do feel present. And the point that I'm saying this, I don't 100% remember. I said that and then um but yeah, it's felt as a bullet point, like I said, on all of these topics. So pulling it to the forefront, and really focusing on it, has made me realize like this is another moment in which I do feel present. When I'm here, we are talking with just a guest, me and the guest going back and forth, me and Susie going back and forth. It gives you that moment to break away from the other things that you may have to do or going to do, and we're just talking and connecting in this moment. These are times I really look forward to. So I really appreciate her from coming on out. And folks, I met Susie 2 weeks ago. Like she said, I'm a bartender outside of this, and she came with a friend and was a guest at the bar, and I gave them some good foods and some good drinks, and we chatted, and she was like, I'm interested in being on the podcast. And so she came and was on the podcast. Snip snap, just like that. And if any of you are interested in being on the podcast, and if any of you are being and if any of you are being what the fuck? And if any of you are interested in being on the podcast, all you have to do is reach out and let me know. You can find my email down below, but it is the PureJoy Podcast at gmail.com. Easy peasy. like that easy. All you got to do, reach out, just say, "Hey, I'm interested in being a guest, and here will be my topic," and we'll chat a little bit about it. Yeah, I appreciate you folks coming on out and listening to this episode of the Pure Joy podcast. I appreciate Susie again for being open and deep discussive with us. A great conversation. I appreciate Mayonnaise and Murda for allowing me to use their music in the intro, the outro, and the transitions of this podcast. Our truly our flow would not be the same without them. So I'm very, very appreciative of them. And while I started with you folks, I'm gonna also end with you folks and say thank you again for listening to this episode of the Pure Joy podcast. We'll see you next time.